Hello, in this video we're going to return to the patients window that we created way back when, and we're going to link the patients window to the appointments data. In other words, we're going to show the appointments data in the patients window. I'll explain more right after these words. Hi, you're listening to Martin, and this is another video in my series looking at getting started with OpenInsight 10. And today we're going to be looking at the patients window that we created quite a long time ago. And if you remember, on the third tab we had a table which is going to have our consultations, and then underneath there the notes from the consultation. Now at the moment, if we run the form and I bring in record number 1, we've got comments here, but under consultations it's totally blank, and we need to hook up this edit table to our MP apps data. So this is going to be the data from the MP apps data table, which is going to display in this form. Bearing in mind this form is currently linked to the MP patients table, so we're actually going to be working with two tables. Now we're going to do all of that using a relational index. And before I get into the practical side of this, I just want to have a word about the relational indexes in OpenInsight and our ideas regarding best practice. I've seen many applications over the years, Ahref and OpenInsight based applications, where the relational has been embedded in the data table itself. In fact, I've used that technique many times myself in previous applications, and maybe even the OI9 tutorials that I did a few years ago. However, our recommendation is to not embed the relational in the data table. Instead, it's better to make a separate table whose key is going to be the same as the main data table, and we should already have our system configured and our data tables, our dictionaries, set up this way if you've been following this series of videos. But just in case, if we go to the database and we'll open up the MP apps, so I'll just open in Table Designer, we'll open up MP Patients again in the Table Designer and the MP Patients rel table. So our main table is our patients table, and in here we should have an app ID, and it's that row that we will be linking to the appointments table. And we should also have some additional or associated rows, so the app date, app doc, app sum, app summary, and time. So that should all be already in your system if you've been following these videos. Likewise, in the appointments table we should have a link to patient row, and that's going to hold the patient ID that we're going to link it to. So this is the patient ID that this appointment belongs to. And then we have an MP patients rel, short for relational table, and in here we just have two items. One is the patient ID, which is a single value, and the other one is the patient appointments, which is a multi-value. Okay, so let's just close out of these for the moment. So why do we recommend this approach of using the rel table? In short, by using a separate relationship table or relational table, we just call it a rel table, it will never become blocked or locked by the user, because the user is never actually going to hit it, only the system. And this means that the relational updates will always succeed. Furthermore, it also means that long lists of keys in a record, they won't be negatively affected and potentially cause issues with hashing of the primary data table. And this approach also gives us the option to clear the relational table using clear table before we rebuild the index, and then we can have the table relate to itself without anything getting confused and all sorts of good things like that. It's also useful to understand that relational indexes usually have a one side and a many side, and in the case of our clinic application, the one side is the patient and the many side is the appointments. I think all of that should be fairly sort of straightforward. So to begin with, what we need to do is add a relational index to our MP appointments or the MP apps window. So if we select the window in the database manager, if you haven't got the database manager showing, click the tab at the bottom, and if you can't see the tab at the bottom, under view tool panels, you've got database. So locate MP apps, right mouse click, and we will add a relational index. Now you're prompted for the index from, and normally it would be the table that you've just selected. So this is going to be the many side, and we need to select the link to patient option, and then this is going to index to MP patients rel, and in here we've just got the one option, which is the patient's appointment. I'm going to rebuild the index immediately, and I'm going to append to the end of the list. So when we're done, we can click add. Do you want to create the relational index for column link to patient? Yes, we do. And the index has been added successfully. Once it's been added, we can close. And at any time, if we do a right mouse click and if we go into list index, you can see the indexes that have been added to this particular table. And if we come out of there and we go into add relational, and if we then click the link to patient, that will then bring back the details of that particular index. Not going to change anything in there, so we'll just close out of there for the moment. Okay, so that's our relational index added. And if I just go back to the MP patients table, that one there, part of the magic is in the app ID column here, and we need to make sure that we have got the following XLate. So add ant equals XLate, and we're XLating to the MP patients rel table using at ID, grabbing the patient apps, and we have the X at the end. So that's a fairly standard XLate that we have in there. Again, all of that should have been already created in an earlier video, so there should be nothing that you need to do. Then you just need to go in and set up the other XLates in exactly the same way to bring in that data based on that record ID. All very straightforward. Okay, so it's just close out of there. And then if we were to test run the form and we do a 1 and return, and we go to consultations, then we can see that we've just got one entry in here at the moment, and we've got an issue with a date and the time. So if we go into the table, and now we can set this at the dictionary level, and I think we did have it set previously, but I've actually removed it because I've been playing around with the system a little bit with one of the developers, just testing some bits and pieces. So in here, I'm going to go into the columns, and I'm just going to set this at the control or the field level. So if I come down to conversion, and this is the date, the conversion that I'm going to have, because I'm in Europe, I'm going to go D2E, and for the time for the conversion, I think that we will just have MTH, and for no real reason I'm going to set the alignment to be centered on both of those. So okay that, If I just do a quick test run, then that should have sorted out the consultations and the date and the time. Okay, right, the next thing that we will do is I'm just going to pause the video. I'm going to add a couple more records into the system. I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so just test run the system here. I've just added a few extra appointments in, and I've associated them with record number 1. So we have the first one here, which is hay fever, follow-up consultation, so 1, 6 and 7. Now as I'm moving around these, I want the detail to show in the bottom, so we'll have a look at that in a moment. But just a last final word about relational indexes. The developers at Revelation have had a lot of success with this approach to relational indexes in OI10. They have systems where they've put the symbolics, or also referred to as calculated columns. So they put the symbolics in the rel table with sum and count, and then they use those for reporting. So for example, using a period underscore format, they can easily convert a date for ISO 8061 formats such as YYYY-MM for year-month. They can then use a rel file keyed by month to add a separate column for each of several data files that they need to summarize by period, and then run an R list or a banded report writer report to report on the summarized data. So for example, the total appointments by month, the total notes by month, the total outages by month, total purchases by month, etc. A lot of that is all out of the scope of this video, but you get the idea of how powerful this approach can be. Right, so let's just come out of the test run mode, and if we just look at the edit table, for the events we need to locate the pos changed event, and then again I'm going to do this as a script just to make it easy. If we had a commuter module, this could just as easily be in there, but we're working with a script for this particular window, and we will have a comment in here to refresh the consultation notes panel as the user moves between rows in the consultation summary edit table. Now I'm going to have some typos in there, but I'm not going to worry about that too much because it's not going to stop the program from working. Then we'll have row data, which is going to equal get property, and this needs to be at window. And we're going to get the property from the edit table, which is edt underscore consultations. Remember that you can flick across to the form and copy and paste if you need to, and we're going to grab row data, and then we'll have a note key, and that is going to be row data 1, and then we'll have note data, which is going to be an XLate, and that's going to be to the mp underscore apps table, passing in or using note key, and we want notes, and we'll just pass the X if it can't find anything. We then need to do a call set property at window, and we're going to use the edit, actually we're going to use the edit box and consultation notes. I need to spell that correctly. We'll use def prop, and we're going to pass in the note data. Okay, we'll just do a very quick compile, and a save. And if we now test run that, passing in record number 1, for the consultations, as we click through, we don't get the information that I needed, so I've got an error in my code. Bear with me just a second. Okay, so this is why you shouldn't code and talk at the same time. I had MP apps wrong, that was spelled incorrectly, and I also needed the EBX consultation notes. So again, it does make sense if you're doing this just to grab the control, copy the control name, and then just paste it in. It's a little bit longer, but you don't get the problems of having to debug your code and stuff like that. So we'll compile and we'll save. And now if we go back to the form and we'll return record number 1, consultations. Now when we click, we get not only the summary for our appointment, but we actually get the detail of the appointment in the box below. Yes, it would probably be nice if when we launched this window and we were on row number 1 that we showed the note for that particular entry, but that's something I'll leave for your programmers to do. For now, I just wanted to finish up this window by linking the edit table to the MP apps data, displaying the consultation information, and then also to show the way that we can have this little preview window at the bottom, preview pane box, whatever you want to call it, at the bottom for each of these consultations. It might actually make sense now that we've got the ID number in here to get rid of the row numbers in here. We don't really need those. That's something else you can tidy up. Anyway, that's it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to start getting into reporting because we're pretty much done with the interface stuff. So I'll be back with that video sometime soon. Take care. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.